My name is Kamran. Some accidents do not just leave marks on a person's body, but they also plant a darkness inside the soul that follows them forever, even while they try to live a normal life. This incident happened about 6 years ago, when my friend Haris, our other friend Usman, and I left Faisalabad on a motorcycle at night to go to Sahiwal. The actual plan was to travel during the day, but as often happens with young people, due to small delays, procrastination, and carelessness, the time to leave ended up being at night. A close relative of Usman had suddenly fallen ill, and some important documents and money had to be delivered to their house. The buses and wagons had stopped running for the night, and Haris immediately said that the three of us should leave on one bike. "It's a night road," he said. "Traffic will be light, we will reach before dawn." I initially objected a little because first, it was a night journey, then it was winter, and on top of that, 3 people on one motorcycle. But in youth, stubbornness often speaks before logic. Haris was considered the bravest among us 3. In fact, the truth is that he was more reckless than brave. He always laughed off every difficult thing. Usman was quiet by nature, but when it came to someone close to him, he did not care about anything. And I was probably the most cautious among us 3. But that night, for some reason, I also did not insist too much. We quickly prepared a bag, some money, a file, 2 warm shawls, and a small torch, and around 10:30 at night we left the city. As the lights of the city faded behind us, it did not feel too bad at first. The road was open. There was cold in the air, but nothing unbearable, and the 3 of us were talking as usual. Haris was driving the bike at the front. Usman was in the middle and I was sitting at the back. Sometimes Haris would make a silly joke. Sometimes Usman would tell him to drive faster. Sometimes I would interrupt and say, "Drive slowly, you never know what might come from the front." We stopped at 1 or 2 places, drank tea, warmed our hands, and then continued. If I remember the beginning of that journey, it was like any ordinary local road trip. 3 friends, 1 motorcycle, a cold night, and the hurry to reach the destination quickly. But the strange thing is that some disasters give their subtle signs at the very beginning. The person just does not understand at that time. A deserted road in a winter night feels different anyway, but that night the silence was unusually long, as if the road was awake but also waiting for someone. Around midnight, we reached an area where fields started on both sides. Far away, the faint sound of a water motor could be heard. Somewhere on a dirt path, a very dim bulb, and everywhere else darkness. The road was straight, but the fog was slowly descending. Haris joked, "Now if a woman in white clothes appears, the journey will be complete." Hearing this, I immediately scolded him, "Do not talk nonsense like that." Usman also said, "You do not say such things on a night journey." But Haris kept laughing. He was among those people who turn fear into a joke and think that makes them strong. Around that same place, we saw an old man on the side of the road, or at least that is what we thought at first. He had a thick sheet on his shoulder, and with a hand gesture, he seemed to be telling us to slow down. Haris did not reduce speed at first, but when the man came very close, the bike slowed a little. That person said something in a very muffled voice that we could not fully understand, but one word was clear: "Do not go from the canal turn." Haris laughed and answered, "Baba Jai, we are late, the shortcut is this way," and we moved ahead. I looked back and saw that the man was standing by the roadside watching us, and for some reason, there was such seriousness in his silence that it put a slight weight on my heart. I told Haris, maybe he refused for some reason. Haris said, "Every old man at night thinks the whole world is full of ghosts," and he laughed again. His laughter sounded particularly hollow on that deserted road. The real problem started when we left the main road and turned onto that relatively shorter path that ran along the canal. This road was not very busy even during the day, and at night, it felt like a completely different world. On one side was the black water of the canal, on the other side were tall trees, in the middle was a narrow road, and over it all, fog had spread. The bike's headlights showed the road only a few yards ahead. Then the fog swallowed it. Now our conversations had also decreased. Haris was driving slower than before. Usman kept saying, "I just want this part to end quickly." And I, sitting at the back, kept looking to both sides continuously, although there was nothing to see, just the shadows of the trees and the darkness of the water. After some time, I felt for the first time as if the weight on the bike had increased. At first, I thought maybe my legs had become stiff or the road was rough. But then, once or twice, I clearly felt that the bike was moving under the burden of something that was not there before. I put my hand on Haris's shoulder and said, "Why is the speed decreasing?" He said, "I don't understand, brother. The bike is feeling heavier." Usman immediately said, "Don't both of you start scaring each other." But even his own voice had panic in it. I started reciting prayers in my heart. But I also kept telling myself that there were 3 people, there was luggage, there was fog, the road was damp. The bike would naturally feel heavy. A few minutes later, we reached near a small bridge that was built on a turn of the canal. The fog was deeper there, and on the broken walls on both sides of the bridge, moss had grown. As soon as the bike climbed onto the bridge, Haris suddenly applied the brake very hard. We 3 almost fell off. I immediately asked, "What happened?" Haris pointed ahead with his finger. In the yellow light of the headlight, for a few moments, we saw something white, as if some person or some cloth was standing right in the middle of the road. But the very next moment, there was nothing there. I swore and said, "I also saw something." But Usman kept saying, "It must have been a trick of the fog." This time Haris did not laugh. He said in a very soft voice, "I saw it clearly. Someone was standing there, then suddenly disappeared." After that, we stood there for about a minute and looked around. But there was no sound of footsteps, no human noise, nothing else. Just the slow movement of the canal water and the wind passing through the trees. We sat back on the bike, but now the journey was not like before. Now every passing second carried its own weight. As soon as we crossed the bridge, Usman suddenly grabbed my arm. His fingers were cold. He said in a very low voice, "Kamran, I feel like someone is touching my back." I said, "What do you mean? I am sitting behind you." He said, "No, not you. Along my shoulder it feels like a 4th person is sitting or leaning while moving." Hearing his words, my breath almost stopped. I immediately removed both my hands from Usman's shoulders to show them and said, "My hands are right here." Haris heard this. Instead of stopping the bike, he tried to speed up, but the bike was moving strangely heavy. Then I myself felt what Usman had been talking about. Something cold touched my left knee, exactly as if an ice-cold finger had lightly brushed against me and passed. At that moment, a verse involuntarily came out of my mouth. Haris said, "Don't look back, no one look back." But when a person is very afraid, whatever they are told not to do, they are drawn toward it. I tried my hardest not to turn my neck, but still, from the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow, as if something was not running but gliding alongside the bike, very close. Haris drove the bike with full force, and we came out of that canal area onto a relatively open road. But the strange thing was that even after coming onto that open road, our fear did not decrease. There was sweat on Haris's forehead, even though it was very cold. Usman was reciting prayers again and again. I was sitting at the back praying for only one thing, that somehow some habitation would appear. Any hotel, any petrol pump, any checkpoint, anything. But the road kept going, and we could not tell if we were even on the right path anymore. Then we saw a faint light in the distance. At first, we thought it might be a roadside eatery. All our hearts felt a little relief. When we got closer, it was a very small tea stall, but strangely deserted. A lantern was burning. One broken table, 2 benches, but no one was visible there. Haris stopped the bike, and we 3 practically got off at the same time. As soon as my feet touched the ground for a moment, it felt as if the bike had become lighter, much lighter, so clearly that I immediately looked at Haris and Usman. Both their faces showed that they had felt it too. We called out loudly, "Is anyone there?" After a few moments, a very old man emerged from the darkness inside. He looked at us. Then he looked at the bike. And then he looked at us with such a gaze as if he was counting something. He asked, "There were 3 of you, right?" Haris immediately said, "Yes, why?" The old man looked at the back seat of the bike. Then he said very softly, "If you want to remain 3, leave from here before dawn. On the way, if any voice calls you from behind, calls your name, or you feel something walking alongside you, never look back. And do not stop the bike." Hearing these words, my heart sank. I asked, "Baba, what kind of road is this?" He only said this much. At the canal turn, sometimes those people attach themselves who could not reach their destination. At that moment, for the first time, Haris looked at me with clear fear. Because this was the same thing that the first old man had also told us in gestures, and we had laughed it off. We did not stay there long. We did not even drink tea. Just splashed water on our faces, recited prayers, and left again. Now Haris's stubbornness and bravery had both broken to a great extent, but one habit of his still remained. He would not admit fear. He kept saying, "Nothing is wrong. The road is bad. We are scared ourselves, so everything seems strange." But the real sign of fear is that the more a person denies it, the deeper it enters inside them. About half an hour later, we reached an area where there was a cemetery on one side of the road. We did not know this beforehand. Between the night, the fog, and the old trees spread along the roadside, when the glimpse of broken graves came in the headlight, a chill ran through my body again. Usman immediately started reciting verses from the Quran. Haris increased his speed. But at that very moment, the bike's engine made a strange noise and died. We 3 got off in the middle of the road, and there was such silence all around that even our own breathing could be heard. Haris kicked the starter many times, but the bike would not start. I said, "Hurry up, we cannot stop here." But his hands were trembling. Usman said, "I do not feel well at all. It feels like someone is watching us from inside the graves." I scolded him, "Be quiet." But the truth was that even my own heart felt the same. Then what happened, I can never forget. First, we heard very faint sounds of laughter, as if someone far away was laughing with closed lips. Then, from another direction, the sound of someone's footsteps. But they were not like ordinary footsteps. It was the sound of feet rubbing against dry leaves. Haris was now trying with full force to start the bike. Usman was standing with me, reciting prayers again and again. I looked to the other side of the road and felt 2 very blurry shadows standing inside the fog, as if 2 people were there. But their height and stillness were not like humans. I immediately looked away. At that same moment, a voice came from behind us, completely clear, completely close, and that voice was of Haris's deceased mother. Haris's hand stopped right there. The color drained from his face. He had mentioned his mother to us many times before. I knew he loved her very much. I immediately grabbed his shoulder and said, "Do not look back. Do not look back at all." But the voice came again, this time softer and even closer. "My son." Tears came to Haris's eyes. Usman screamed and said, "Haris, do not look, do not look." But the human heart, many times, loses its reason at the voice of its weakest bond. Haris slowly turned his neck. I still cannot say with complete certainty what Haris saw because I myself could not gather the courage to look back fully. But as soon as he turned his neck, such a scream came out of his mouth that for a moment my heart stopped right there. It was not just a scream of fear. It also had the sound of recognition breaking, as if he had first seen someone he knew, and the very next moment he realized that it was not his loved one at all. Haris's hand slipped from the handle. His body went limp, and he started being pulled toward the side of the road, as if someone had hooked his waist and was dragging him toward themselves. At that same moment, the bike started on its own with a jerk. Usman immediately grabbed Haris's jacket and pulled him toward himself with all his strength. But Haris's shoes were dragging on the ground, and only broken words were coming from his mouth. "Hold me, hold me." I also jumped down and rushed toward them. But as soon as I reached the side of the road, it felt as if my feet had fallen not on solid ground but on some soft, sinking layer. Usman was screaming. He was pulling Haris toward himself, but Haris's eyes were not on us. He was staring at something in the fog. Then for a moment I also saw it. Inside the fog, a tall white figure was standing, and on both sides of it, two dark shadows were moving in a bent manner. Haris was not going toward them on his own. He was being dragged between them. Usman pulled Haris toward himself with a final burst of strength. For a moment I thought perhaps he would be saved. Haris leaned half toward us and said in a completely broken voice, "Do not leave me." But the very next moment, the jacket was yanked forward so hard, as if someone from the other side had pulled it with full force. Usman lost his balance. He fell forward along with Haris, and then what happened is beyond my understanding even today. Both of them seemed to be descending not into the ground but into the fog, first up to their knees, then up to their waists, then up to their chests, as if a hidden pit had opened in the air in front of us. Usman screamed my name one last time. Haris's voice joined with his, and then both their voices faded away as if they were falling into a very deep well. I was just about to step toward them when someone took my name in a very cold voice, right next to my ear. It was not Haris's voice, nor Usman's, nor any single human's. It was as if many broken voices were whispering together. My entire body went numb. I took one step back, and perhaps that one step brought me back alive, because the very next moment there was nothing there. No Haris, no Usman. Only the pressed mud on the side of the road, Usman's mobile phone, a torn piece of Haris's jacket, and a sound coming from inside the fog that first called for help, then slowly turned into laughter. That moment was the worst moment of my life. I was left alone in the middle of the road. The bike was running. All around me was the same laughter, the same rubbing against leaves. At that moment I forgot friendship, loyalty, everything. I just wanted to stay alive. I grabbed the bike. I did not have the sense to sit properly, nor any balance, and I sped away from there at full speed. From behind I heard Usman's voice once, or perhaps I thought I heard him calling my name. But the tea seller old man's words were hammering in my mind. If a voice calls your name, never stop. Crying, reciting prayers, trembling, I kept driving the bike. Many times I felt as if some weight had returned to the back of the bike. Many times I felt as if a shadow was running alongside me, but I neither reduced speed nor looked back. Just before dawn I entered a populated area. In front of the first mosque I saw, I fell off the bike completely. When people picked me up, I was not in my senses. Much later, I told the entire incident in broken words. At first, no one believed me. Then when people went on the road we had described, far away on the roadside, Haris's jacket was found and Usman's mobile phone. But neither of the two was found. The area around the canal, the cemetery part, the fields, everywhere was searched. The police were also involved, but nothing was found. Some people said that perhaps they had fallen into the canal. Some said that maybe after an accident they had gone somewhere else. But those who knew the old tailies of that area said something else. According to them, between that canal road and the cemetery, there was a stretch where many people had disappeared during night journeys years ago, especially those people who heard a voice and stopped or looked back. And some old people used to say that those beings called toward themselves those travelers who, in haste, in negligence, or in stubbornness, set out on that road at night. I heard these things later, but by then it was already too late. Years have passed since this incident. On the surface, I live a normal life. I meet people, I work, I even laugh. But the truth is that to this day, I avoid night journeys. When I see three friends sitting together on one motorcycle, a strange pain awakens inside my heart. I still do not know exactly what Horace saw that night when he turned his neck. I never asked anyone. I never wanted to know. But sometimes in my dreams, I see that same fog, that same canal bridge, and two figures walking away from me, sinking slowly into the white darkness. And the worst part is that in those dreams I never scream. I just stand there, watching, because somewhere deep inside, I know that if I run after them, the same cold voice will call my name from behind. And this time, perhaps I will not have the strength to take that one step back. I do not remember exactly how I reached home that morning. The sun had risen, but I could still feel the cold of that fog inside my bones. My mother opened the door and screamed when she saw me. My clothes were covered in mud. My hands were bleeding from small scratches I did not even remember getting. My eyes were red and swollen. She asked me where Horace and Usman were. I could not answer. I just stood there shaking. For 3 days, I did not speak a single word. My father took me to the doctor. They gave me injections to calm me down. They said it was shock. They said I had probably been in an accident and my friends had run away or fallen somewhere. They tried to convince me that everything had a logical explanation, but I knew what I had seen. I knew what I had heard, and I knew that no logic could bring Horace and Usman back. On the 4th day, the police came to our house. They asked me questions again and again. Where exactly did you stop? Which canal turn was it? Can you describe the tea stall? Can you remember the old man's face? I answered everything as clearly as I could, but when they went to search again, they found nothing. No tea stall, no old man, no marks on the road, nothing. One police officer told my father quietly, thinking I could not hear, "Your son is traumatized. Maybe his mind invented some details to cope with whatever happened to his friends." But I had not invented anything. The tea stall was real. The old man was real. The laughter was real. And the voice that called Horace by his name, using his dead mother's voice, that was more real than anything I had ever experienced in my entire life. Weeks passed, then months. Horace and Usman never returned. Their families searched everywhere. They put posters in every city. They went to newspapers and television channels, but nothing. It was as if the earth had swallowed them whole, or perhaps not the earth, perhaps the fog. I stopped going out at night completely. Even after sunset, I would lock my doors and windows. I would keep a light on in my room until morning. My family thought I had become paranoid. Maybe I had, but they had not seen what I had seen. They had not felt a cold finger brush against their knee on an empty road. They had not heard their own name whispered by something that had no mouth. One night, about 2 months after the incident, I had my first nightmare about that night. I was back on the same road, the same fog, the same bridge, but this time I was alone on the bike, and the bike was not moving forward, it was moving backward. Slowly, inch by inch, toward the cemetery. I tried to twist the accelerator, but nothing happened. I tried to brake, but the brakes were gone. Then I heard Usman's voice from behind me, not screaming, not crying, just very calm. He said, "Kamran, why didn't you come with us?" I woke up screaming. My mother rushed into my room. The bedsheet was soaked with sweat, and on the floor near my bed there was a small patch of damp mud, even though my windows had been closed all night, even though there was no mud anywhere in the house. I cleaned it myself. I did not tell my mother. She was already worried enough. But from that night on, I started sleeping with a small copy of the Quran under my pillow. The nightmares did not stop. They came every week, sometimes twice a week. Always the same, the fog, the bridge, the backward-moving bike, and Usman's voice asking me why I did not come with them. Sometimes Horace would also be there, standing in the fog, wearing the same torn jacket, his face half hidden. He never spoke. He just looked at me, and his eyes were not his own. They were deep and dark and cold like the water of the canal on that night. I tried everything to make the nightmares stop. I went to a therapist. I took medicines. I even went to a spiritual healer who gave me a tawiz to wear around my neck. For a few weeks, the nightmares became less frequent. I thought perhaps I was finally healing. Perhaps the memories were finally fading. But then something happened that proved to me that what I had experienced was not just in my mind. 3 years after that night, I had to travel for a job interview. The interview was in a city about 4 hours from my home. The only bus that would get me there on time left at 3 a.m. I had no choice. I told myself that it had been 3 years, that whatever happened was on that specific road, that I would be on a bus, not a bike, that I would be with other people, that nothing would happen. The bus left on time. There were about 20 other passengers, old men, women with children, young students like myself. For the first hour, everything was normal. I even started to relax. I looked out the window at the passing darkness and told myself that I had been a fool to be afraid all these years. Then the bus turned onto a road I recognized. My heart stopped. The trees, the narrow pavement, the darkness on both sides, the faint smell of canal water in the air. I stood up from my seat and went to the driver. I said, "Can we take a different road?" The driver looked at me like I was crazy. He said, "This is the shortest route. Why would I take a different road?" I did not know what to say. I could not tell him the truth, so I just sat back down and started reciting prayers in my heart. I told myself that I was on a bus. There were 20 other people. Nothing would happen. Nothing would happen. Nothing would happen. And for a while, nothing did. The bus crossed the bridge where Horace had first seen the white figure. Nothing happened. The bus passed the area where the bike had died. Nothing happened. I started to breathe again. I started to believe that perhaps the nightmare was truly over. Then the bus stopped. The driver got out to check something. He said the engine was overheating. He said it would only take a few minutes. We were right next to the cemetery. I could see the broken graves from my window. The same graves. The same moss-covered walls. The same fog beginning to form on the edges of the road. I closed my eyes. I covered my ears. I started reciting every prayer I knew. Then I heard it. A soft laugh from outside my window. I opened my eyes. The window was closed. The glass was fogged up from the inside because of my breath. But on that fogged glass, someone had drawn a small circle with a finger. A small, perfect circle. The same size as the damp mark I had seen on Usman's shoulder that night. I screamed. The other passengers looked at me. The driver came running back. I told him to start the bus immediately. I did not care about the engine. I did not care if it broke down. I just wanted to leave. The driver looked at my face and must have seen something there because he got back in without arguing and started the engine. The bus moved. I did not look out the window again until we had left that road far behind. I got the job. I moved to a different city. I thought that if I put enough distance between myself and that road, I would finally be safe. And for 2 years I was. I stopped having nightmares. I stopped flinching at every white sheet. I stopped checking under my bed before sleeping. I started to feel like a normal person again. But last month I had to go back to my hometown for a family wedding. I took the train during the day. I stayed in my house. I did not go anywhere near the canal road. On the last night of my stay, I was sleeping in my old room, the same room where I had found damp mud on the floor years ago. I woke up in the middle of the night. The room was cold, much colder than it should have been. I looked at the window. The glass was fogged up from the outside. Something was pressing against it. Not a hand, not a face, just a shape, a tall, white shape. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Then I heard a voice. Not inside the room, inside my head. It was Usman's voice. He said, "We are still waiting for you, Kamran. We never left that road, and we will never leave until you come back." I blinked. The fog on the window disappeared. The shape was gone. The room was warm again. I checked my phone. It was 3:33 a.m., the same time when the bike had died on that night years ago. I left my hometown the next morning. I have not returned since. I do not know if I will ever return. I do not know if Usman and Haris are still on that road, wandering in the fog, waiting for someone to join them. I do not know if the old man at the tea stall was a ghost himself, warning us, or something else entirely. But I know one thing for certain. If you are ever driving at night, on a deserted road in the fog, and you see an old man gesturing for you to slow down, if you hear laughter coming from the trees, if you feel a cold hand on your shoulder when no one is sitting behind you, and if someone calls your name using the voice of someone you love who has already died, do not stop, do not look back, do not turn your neck. Just drive, and pray that the road ends before they reach you. I am Kamran. This was my story. May Allah protect you all from silent roads, from heavy fogs, and from voices that call your name when they should not. If you found this story terrifying and thought-provoking, then please like the video. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe so that every new and horrifying story can reach you first. Do tell in the comments which part of this story you found the most frightening. May Allah keep you all in His protection. Give me permission. We will meet with another terrifying story.